On November 11, 2022, Sam Bankman-Fried sat in his $40 million Bahamas penthouse watching his crypto empire collapse in real time. $8 billion of customer money gone. His net worth from $26 billion to zero in 72 hours. His reputation as the J.P. Morgan of crypto destroyed. Just 3 weeks earlier, he'd been on stage at conferences talking about the future of finance. Celebrities like Tom Brady and Gisele Bündchen were his brand ambassadors. Politicians from both parties took his donations. He was the 30-year-old MIT graduate who'd figured out how to make crypto work, the genius who was going to save the industry from itself. But Sam Bankman-Fried wasn't a genius. He was a thief. For years, he'd been secretly using customer deposits from his crypto exchange FTX to cover massive gambling losses at his trading firm Alameda Research. When customers tried to withdraw their money in November 2022, they discovered the truth. Their crypto wasn't there. It had been gambled away, used to buy political influence, spent on luxury penthouses and celebrity endorsements. By the time federal prosecutors arrested him in the Bahamas in December 2022, Sam Bankman-Fried had orchestrated one of the largest financial frauds in American history. And he'd done it all while wearing cargo shorts and playing video games during meetings, cultivating an image of the quirky genius who was too smart to be a criminal. This is the story of how an MIT graduate fooled Wall Street, Silicon Valley, and millions of ordinary people, and how it all came crashing down in spectacular fashion. Let's go back to where it started. Massachusetts Institute of Technology, 2010. Sam Bankman-Fried arrived at MIT as a physics major. He was brilliant. There was no question about that. The kind of brilliant that made professors take notice. He could solve complex mathematical problems in his head. He understood probability theory at a level most people never reach. And he had a particular talent for finding inefficiencies in systems, gaps where money could be made. He wasn't the typical MIT student, though. While others were meticulous and organized, Sam was chaos. He'd show up to class in wrinkled t-shirts and shorts. His hair was a mess of curls he never bothered to style. He'd start conversations mid-thought, assuming you'd catch up to whatever problem he was solving in his head. But the chaos was part of his charm. People found it endearing. Here was this genuine genius who didn't care about appearances or social conventions. He just cared about ideas, about making the world better through rational thinking and effective altruism. That last part, effective altruism, would become central to Sam's identity, and later, his fraud. Effective altruism is a philosophical movement that says you should earn as much money as possible and then donate it to the most effective causes. Not just any charity, but the ones that mathematically save the most lives per dollar spent. Sam became obsessed with this idea. He'd tell people his plan, make billions of dollars, give it all away. He wasn't motivated by greed. He was motivated by a moral imperative to maximize human happiness. How could you argue with someone who wanted to get rich specifically to give it all to charity? After MIT, Sam worked briefly at the quantitative trading firm Jane Street Capital. He was good at it, very good. He understood market inefficiencies instinctively. But traditional finance was too slow for him, too regulated. He wanted something bigger, faster, with more potential for massive returns. In 2017, Sam discovered cryptocurrency. And more specifically, he discovered something called the kimchi premium, a pricing inefficiency where Bitcoin traded for significantly more money in South Korea than in the United States. If you could buy Bitcoin in the US for $10,000 and sell it in Korea for $12,000, you'd make $2,000 profit on each coin. Scale that up, and you could make millions. Sam founded Alameda Research in 2017 to exploit these arbitrage opportunities. He recruited a team of smart young traders, mostly from MIT and other elite schools. They were going to be the quant traders of the crypto world. using math and algorithms to make systematic profits. The kimchi premium trade worked for a while. Alameda made tens of millions. But arbitrage opportunities don't last forever. Markets become efficient. The easy money disappears. By 2019, Alameda was struggling. They'd lost money on bad trades. The arbitrage edges were gone. They needed a new strategy. That's when Sam came up with a different plan. Instead of just trading crypto, why not create their own crypto exchange? A place where people could buy and sell cryptocurrencies easily with low fees and good technology. If they owned the exchange, they'd make money on every trade anyone made. It was a better business model than trying to beat the market themselves. In May 2019, FTX was born. FTX stood for Futures Exchange. It was designed to let people trade cryptocurrency derivatives, basically bets on whether crypto prices would go up or down. Sam positioned FTX as the professional crypto exchange, built by MIT graduates and quantitative traders who understood risk management and financial engineering. The timing was perfect. Cryptocurrency was entering mainstream consciousness. Bitcoin had recovered from earlier crashes. New coins were being created constantly, and people wanted a trustworthy platform to trade them, something better than the existing exchanges that were slow, buggy, and sometimes fraudulent. FTX launched with impressive technology, fast execution, clean interface, advanced trading features, and Sam became the face of the company, the young genius who was bringing Wall Street sophistication to the Wild West of crypto. But here's what nobody knew. From the very beginning, FTX and Alameda Research were dangerously intertwined. They were supposed to be separate companies. Alameda was just another customer on the FTX platform, like thousands of other traders. But in reality, Sam had built a backdoor into the FTX code. Alameda had unlimited borrowing privileges. They could withdraw customer deposits whenever they wanted, without triggering any alarms or limits. It was like giving one customer at a bank the ability to walk into the vault and take as much money as they needed whenever they needed it. Why would Sam do this? Because Alameda was losing money. A lot of money. Bad trades, bad bets, bad risk management. And instead of letting Alameda fail, which would have been the honest thing to do, Sam used FTX customer deposits to cover Alameda's losses. It started small. A few million here, a few million there. Just temporary loans that Alameda would pay back once they had a winning streak. But the losses kept mounting, and the loans kept getting bigger. And Sam kept telling himself it would all work out. This is the fundamental fraud at the heart of FTX. Customer deposits weren't kept safe. They were used as a personal piggy bank to fund a failing trading firm. Every customer who deposited Bitcoin or dollars into FTX thought their money was secure, sitting in their account waiting for them to trade or withdraw it. But it wasn't there. It was in Alameda's accounts, being gambled on risky trades. By 2021, Sam Bankman-Fried had become crypto royalty. FTX was one of the largest exchanges in the world, processing billions of dollars in trades every day. The company was valued at $32 billion. Sam's personal net worth was estimated at $26 billion, making him one of the richest people under 30 in the world. He moved FTX headquarters to the Bahamas, partly for favorable regulations, partly for the tax advantages, partly because he could. He bought a $40 million penthouse in a luxury resort. He hired celebrities to promote FTX. Tom Brady and Gisele Bündchen became equity investors and brand ambassadors. Larry David starred in a Super Bowl commercial making fun of people who didn't trust crypto. Sam was everywhere. Congressional hearings on crypto regulation? He was testifying. Financial conferences? He was the keynote speaker. Magazine covers? He was the quirky billionaire genius who was going to revolutionize finance. And he played the part perfectly. He gave interviews in his signature wrinkled t-shirt and cargo shorts, sitting on a beanbag chair, playing League of Legends during phone calls. He talked about effective altruism constantly, how he planned to give away his billions to save lives. He criticized other crypto companies for being irresponsible and poorly regulated. The whole image was, I'm not like those other crypto bros. I'm a serious person building a serious business. Except none of it was true. Behind the scenes, FTX was a disaster. There was no real accounting, no separation between customer funds and company funds, no risk management. Sam ran everything from a group chat with his inner circle, Caroline Ellison, his ex-girlfriend who ran Alameda, Gary Wang, his MIT friend and FTX co-founder, and a few others. They'd make billion-dollar decisions over signal messages. They'd approve massive trades without documentation. They'd move customer money around at will, using it to make venture capital investments, buy political influence, sponsor sports stadiums, whatever Sam wanted. And the crazy thing? Nobody caught it. Venture capitalists invested billions without proper due diligence. Sequoia Capital, one of the most prestigious VC firms in Silicon Valley, invested $213 million based largely on a meeting where Sam played video games the entire time. They thought his quirky genius persona was charming. They didn't demand to see audited financial statements. Regulators didn't catch it either. Sam donated over $40 million to politicians, mostly Democrats, but also Republicans. He became the second largest donor to Joe Biden's 2020 campaign. He testified before Congress about crypto regulation, positioning himself as the responsible adult in the room who wanted sensible rules. The politicians loved him. Here was a young billionaire who wasn't flashy or arrogant, who wanted to give his money away, who supported their campaigns. They didn't dig deeper. They didn't ask hard questions about how FTX actually worked, and customers didn't catch it because, well, how could they? When you deposit money into an exchange, you trust that it's being held safely. You see your account balance. You can make trades. Some people can withdraw. Everything looks normal. You have no way of knowing that behind the scenes, your deposits are being used to cover someone else's gambling losses. By mid-2022, Alameda Research owed FTX over $8 billion. $8 billion of customer money had been lent to Alameda for trades and investments that had gone bad. The hole was so large that there was no way to fill it without being caught. Sam knew this. His inner circle knew this. But they kept going, kept taking new deposits, kept running ads with Tom Brady, kept pretending everything was fine. They were hoping, praying, that crypto prices would surge, and Alameda's positions would become profitable and they could quietly pay back the customer money and nobody would ever know. It was a desperate gamble, and it failed. In early November 2022, a crypto news site published a leaked balance sheet from Alameda Research. The numbers looked weird. Alameda had billions of dollars in assets, but most of them were FTT, FTX's own token, and they had billions in liabilities. The balance sheet suggested Alameda was essentially insolvent, propped up by FTX tokens that might be worthless if anyone looked too closely. Changpeng Zhao, known as CZ, the CEO of Binance, FTX's main competitor, saw the report. Binance had previously invested in FTX but had sold their stake, receiving FTT tokens as payment. Now, looking at Alameda's suspicious balance sheet, CZ made a decision. On November 6, 2022, he tweeted, "As part of Binance's exit from FTX equity last year, Binance received roughly $2.1 billion USD equivalent in FTT. Due to recent revelations that have came to light, we have decided to liquidate any remaining FTT on our books." That single tweet destroyed FTX. Customers panicked. If Binance was dumping FTT tokens, maybe they knew something bad about FTX. People rushed to withdraw their funds. In 48 hours, customers tried to withdraw $5 billion from FTX. But the money wasn't there. It was gone. Used by Alameda. Lost in bad trades. Spent on penthouses and Super Bowl ads and political donations. FTX froze withdrawals. Sam went on Twitter trying to reassure people that everything was fine, that FTX was solvent, that withdrawals would resume soon. He was lying. He knew exactly how bad it was. Within a week, FTX filed for bankruptcy. Sam resigned as CEO, and the world discovered that one of the largest crypto exchanges had been running on empty for years. Customer money stolen and gambled away by a 30-year-old in cargo shorts who'd convinced everyone he was a genius. The collapse happened so fast that even people inside FTX couldn't fully process it. On November 6, 2022, FTX was a $32 billion company with millions of customers. By November 11th, it was bankrupt. Sam Bankman-Fried had resigned, and federal prosecutors were opening criminal investigations. But in those 5 days between the beginning and the end, Sam tried everything to save himself. First, he tried to get rescued. He called every billionaire, every venture capitalist, every crypto company he knew. "I need $8 billion to cover withdrawals," he'd say. "Just a short-term loan. FTX is fundamentally sound. This is just a liquidity crisis." It wasn't a liquidity crisis. It was fraud. But Sam kept pitching the rescue like it was just a cash flow problem, like customer money had been temporarily misplaced rather than systematically stolen over years. For a brief moment, it looked like Binance might buy FTX. CZ, the same CEO who'd triggered the collapse with his tweet, announced that Binance had signed a letter of intent to acquire FTX and help customers. Sam felt a wave of relief. He'd be diluted, maybe lose control, but at least he wouldn't go to prison. That relief lasted about 24 hours. Binance's due diligence team took one look at FTX's actual financials and ran. "This is beyond our control or ability to help," CZ announced publicly. Translation: "The hole is so large and the fraud is so obvious that we can't touch this with a 10-foot pole." Nobody else wanted to rescue FTX either. The more potential buyers looked at the books, the worse it got. Customer deposits gone. Alameda borrowing unlimited amounts. No internal controls. Commingled accounts. Phantom assets. It wasn't a company that needed saving. It was a crime scene. On November 11th, 2022, FTX filed for bankruptcy. John Ray III, a veteran bankruptcy attorney who'd cleaned up Enron, was brought in as the new CEO. His first filing with the bankruptcy court was scathing. "Never in my career have I seen such a complete failure of corporate controls and such a complete absence of trustworthy financial information." This was a man who'd handled Enron, one of the most infamous corporate frauds in American history, and he was saying FTX was worse. That's how bad Sam's operation was. Ray's team started digging through FTX's records and discovered things that were almost comically negligent. Customer funds stored in accounts labeled FTX customers. Company expenses paid with an emoji system. Employees would send emails with emoji requests and someone would approve wire transfers. No real accounting software, no documentation of major transactions. Luxury properties bought with customer money and listed as corporate assets. In the Bahamas penthouse where Sam lived with his inner circle, investigators found documents that showed Sam, Caroline Ellison, Gary Wang, and Nishad Singh had been fully aware of the fraud. Signal chats where they discussed how to hide the Alameda borrowing from customers and investors. Internal spreadsheets showing the $8 billion hole in customer funds. Board presentations with made-up numbers to cover the theft. All of it pointed to Sam as the architect. He'd built the back door in the code. He'd authorized Alameda's unlimited borrowing. He'd decided to use customer money rather than let Alameda fail. And he'd lied about it for years to customers, investors, regulators, and the public. But Sam wasn't ready to accept responsibility. Even as FTX was collapsing and the evidence of fraud was mounting, he went on a bizarre media tour trying to salvage his reputation. He gave interviews to journalists. He went on podcasts. He posted long Twitter threads. And in every single one, he denied committing fraud. His story was consistent. I made mistakes. I was a bad manager. I didn't pay enough attention to risk management. But I never intended to steal customer money. This was all just a series of unfortunate events that spiraled out of control. It was an absurd defense. He'd built a backdoor into FTX's code specifically to let Alameda withdraw customer funds. He'd known for years that billions were missing. He'd lied repeatedly about FTX being safe and solvent, but he kept insisting he'd just been overwhelmed and made mistakes. In one particularly cringeworthy interview with a New York Times columnist, Sam tried to explain his decision-making. Look, I didn't knowingly commit fraud. I was really bad at accounting. I didn't realize how leveraged Alameda was. I thought the money was there. The journalist pushed back. But you knew Alameda was borrowing from FTX, right? I mean, yeah, but I thought it was like collateralized. I thought we had enough assets to cover it. Did you check? Not carefully enough. It was the defense of a guilty man trying to find any excuse that might stick. I'm not a criminal. I'm just incompetent. Doesn't work when the incompetence includes systematically stealing $8 billion. His lawyers were horrified by these interviews. Criminal defense attorneys always tell their clients, "Shut up, don't talk to anyone. Let us handle this." But Sam couldn't help himself. He genuinely believed he could talk his way out of this, that if he explained it the right way, people would understand it was all just a big misunderstanding. Meanwhile, his inner circle was cooperating with prosecutors. Caroline Ellison, his ex-girlfriend who'd run Alameda, cut a plea deal almost immediately. She admitted to fraud, agreed to cooperate fully, and provided prosecutors with documents and testimony showing that Sam had directed everything. The signal chats, the fake balance sheets, the lies to investors, all of it came from Sam. Gary Wang, the co-founder and chief technology officer, also pleaded guilty. He was the one who'd built the backdoor in the code that allowed Alameda unlimited access to customer funds. He told prosecutors that Sam had specifically asked him to create it, knowing it would be used to cover Alameda's losses. Nishad Singh, the engineering director, pleaded guilty too. He'd helped move money around, helped create false financial statements, helped perpetuate the fraud, all at Sam's direction. One by one, everyone in Sam's inner circle flipped on him. They all told the same story. Sam was in charge. Sam made the decisions. Sam knew exactly what was happening and chose to keep stealing customer money rather than admit Alameda was failing. On December 12, 2022, Bahamas authorities arrested Sam Bankman-Fried at his luxury penthouse. The arrest happened the night before he was scheduled to testify before Congress. Prosecutors wanted to make sure he didn't have the opportunity to lie under oath. Sam was taken to Fox Hill Prison in Nassau, a notoriously brutal facility where conditions were so bad that human rights organizations had filed complaints. For a week, the 30-year-old billionaire who'd been living in a $40 million penthouse found himself in a cockroach-infested cell with violent criminals, eating prison food, sleeping on a concrete slab. His lawyers immediately fought extradition, but Sam himself decided to waive his right to fight it. He wanted to go to the United States, face the charges, and continue his media campaign to prove his innocence. His lawyers advised strongly against this. Stay in the Bahamas as long as possible, make the prosecutors work for it. But Sam overruled them. He was extradited to New York on December 21, 2022. Federal prosecutors charged him with 8 criminal counts: wire fraud, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, securities fraud, conspiracy to commit securities fraud, and conspiracy to commit money laundering. Each count carried decades in prison. Sam was released on a $250 million bond, the largest in history, secured by his parents' house in Palo Alto. He was confined to his parents' home with electronic monitoring while awaiting trial. His parents, both Stanford law professors, stood by him publicly, insisting their son was innocent. But living with his parents under house arrest, Sam couldn't stop himself from continuing to dig his hole deeper. He kept reaching out to journalists. He kept posting on social media. He kept trying to shape the narrative. The most damaging thing he did was contact Caroline Ellison, his ex-girlfriend who was cooperating with prosecutors. He sent her encrypted messages suggesting what she should say if she were called to testify. He shared documents with a journalist that painted Caroline in a negative light, her private diary entries where she'd written about feeling overwhelmed by the fraud. When prosecutors found out about this witness tampering, they immediately asked the judge to revoke Sam's bail. Judge Lewis Kaplan agreed. In August 2023, Sam's bond was revoked, and he was sent to the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn to await trial. No more house arrest, no more access to the internet, no more media interviews. Just a jail cell. The trial began in October 2023. Federal prosecutors versus Sam Bankman-Fried, with the whole crypto world watching. Would the effective altruist who'd fooled everyone be convicted? Or would his high-powered legal team find a way to create reasonable doubt? From the moment opening statements began, it was clear the government had an overwhelming case. They had Sam's inner circle testifying against him. They had signal chats showing he knew about the fraud. They had financial records proving the $8 billion hole. They had recordings of him lying to investors and customers. They had everything. The prosecution's case was simple and devastating. Sam built FTX to steal customer money. He used Alameda as a vehicle to funnel billions into risky trades and personal expenses. He lied to everyone, customers, investors, regulators, about what was happening. And when it all collapsed, he tried to cover it up and escape accountability. Caroline Ellison was the star witness. She spent 3 days on the stand, testifying in excruciating detail about how the fraud worked. She explained how Sam had directed her to use FTX customer funds to cover Alameda's losses. She showed the jury signal messages where Sam had told her to create fake balance sheets to hide the borrowing. She admitted her own guilt, but made clear that Sam was the one calling the shots. "He set up the system," Caroline testified, her voice steady despite the obvious emotional weight of testifying against her ex-boyfriend. "He directed Alameda to take billions from FTX. He knew it was wrong, and he did it anyway because he thought he could get away with it." Gary Wang testified about building the backdoor in FTX's code. "Sam asked me to create unlimited withdrawal privileges for Alameda," Wang told the jury. "I knew it was dangerous. I told him it meant Alameda could take customer money. He said to do it anyway." Nishad Singh testified about the company culture where Sam made all decisions, and everyone else just followed orders. "We all knew customers' money was being used," Singh said. "But Sam kept saying it was fine, that we'd make it back, that everything would work out." Customer after another took the stand to describe losing their life savings. A teacher who'd invested his retirement, a programmer who'd put his kid's college fund into FTX, an elderly couple who'd trusted the platform because Tom Brady endorsed it. All of them wiped out because Sam stole their money. Sam's defense was not good. His lawyers tried to argue that this was all just business decisions that went wrong, that Sam had relied on bad advice from lawyers and accountants, that he genuinely believed FTX was solvent until the very end. But it was impossible to square that defense with the evidence. The signal chats where Sam discussed hiding the fraud, the fake balance sheets, the lies to investors, the $8 billion hole that had been growing for years. None of that looked like innocent mistakes. Sam took the stand in his own defense, against his lawyer's advice. He spent hours trying to explain away the evidence. "I didn't think I was doing anything wrong," he said repeatedly. "I thought the risk management was adequate. I relied on the compliance team. I didn't know exactly how much Alameda had borrowed." Under cross-examination, federal prosecutor Danielle Sassoon destroyed him. She walked him through signal messages where he'd clearly known about the fraud. She showed him financial documents he'd signed showing the missing customer funds. She caught him in multiple lies and contradictions. By the time Sam left the witness stand, even his own lawyers looked defeated. He'd been a terrible witness, evasive, arrogant, unable to accept responsibility. The jury had watched him refuse to give straight answers, deflect blame, and insist he'd just made mistakes while the evidence showed systematic fraud. The trial lasted 6 weeks. The jury deliberated for less than 5 hours. Guilty, on all 7 counts. 1 count had been dropped earlier in the trial. Sam Bankman-Fried, the MIT graduate who'd fooled Wall Street, Silicon Valley, and millions of customers, was now a convicted felon facing decades in federal prison. While awaiting sentencing, prosecutors and defense attorneys filed dueling memoranda arguing about what sentence Sam deserved. Prosecutors asked for 40 to 50 years. They argued that Sam had committed one of the largest financial frauds in American history, stealing $8 billion from people who trusted him, that he'd shown no remorse, that he'd lied repeatedly even after being caught, that he'd tried to tamper with witnesses, that he needed to be punished severely to deter others from similar frauds. The defendant victimized tens of thousands of people and companies across several continents over a period of multiple years, the prosecutors wrote. He stole billions of dollars from people who trusted him, and even after his crimes were exposed, he continued to lie and obstruct justice. A lengthy sentence is necessary. Sam's lawyers asked for 5 to 6.5 years. They argued that Sam was a first-time offender with no prior criminal history, that he'd built a legitimate business that had helped many people before it collapsed, that he suffered from autism spectrum disorder and would be particularly vulnerable in prison, that customers would likely recover most of their money through bankruptcy proceedings, so the actual loss was much smaller than $8 billion. Sam is not the villain he's been portrayed as, his defense memo argued. He's a young man who made mistakes, who built something real before it failed, who deserves a chance at redemption. The victims filed their own statements, hundreds of them. Teachers who'd lost retirement savings, small business owners who'd lost their company's operating funds, people who'd trusted FTX because Sam seemed so smart and ethical and had celebrity endorsements. One victim wrote, "I believed in Sam. I watched his interviews about effective altruism and thought he was genuinely trying to make the world better. I put my life savings into FTX. Now it's gone. I'm 63 years old and I'll never recover from this. Sam destroyed my retirement because he wanted to play billionaire." Another, "My son convinced me to invest in crypto through FTX. He believed in Sam, believed in the mission. Now my son blames himself for my losses. Sam didn't just steal money, he destroyed families." March 28, 2024. Federal Courthouse in Manhattan. The sentencing hearing for Sam Bankman-Fried. The courtroom was packed. Victims who'd lost everything. Journalists from around the world. Former FTX employees. Federal prosecutors who'd spent over a year building the case. And at the defense table, Sam Bankman-Fried in prison khakis, his famous curly hair now cut short, looking smaller somehow than the confident billionaire who'd appeared on magazine covers just 2 years earlier. Judge Lewis Kaplan had presided over the entire trial. He'd watched Sam testify and lie on the stand. He'd read thousands of pages of evidence. He'd heard the victim statements. And now he had to decide how many years this 32-year-old would spend in federal prison. Before the sentencing, Sam was given a chance to address the court. He stood, his lawyers beside him, and spoke directly to Judge Kaplan. "Your Honor, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to all the victims, to everyone I let down, to everyone who trusted me. I made terrible decisions. I let my customers down. I let my employees down. I let my family down. Not a day goes by that I don't think about what I did and the harm I caused." It was perhaps the first time Sam had taken direct responsibility without qualifications or excuses. But it was too little, too late. For years, he'd denied wrongdoing. He'd gone on media tours blaming everyone but himself. He'd tried to tamper with witnesses. Only now, facing decades in prison, did he finally apologize. Judge Kaplan wasn't buying it. "Mr. Bankman-Fried," the judge said, his voice cold and precise, "I've seen many defendants stand where you're standing. Some are genuinely remorseful. Others are simply sorry they got caught. Based on everything I've observed during this trial, I believe you fall into the latter category." The judge continued, "You lied to customers. You lied to investors. You lied to lenders. You lied to regulators. And when you took the stand in this courtroom under oath, you lied to the jury. You have shown a complete disregard for the truth and for other people's money." Sam stood motionless, staring at the floor. "The defense argues that customers will recover most of their money through bankruptcy proceedings. That's irrelevant. You stole billions of dollars. The fact that crypto prices happened to increase after your arrest, allowing some recovery, doesn't diminish your crime. You can't rob a bank and then argue for leniency because the bank's investments did well and they could cover the loss." Judge Kaplan laid out the scale of the fraud. $8 billion stolen from customers. Thousands of victims. Systematic deception over years. Obstruction of justice even after being charged. And perhaps most damning, the complete lack of genuine remorse. "You cultivated an image as someone who was different from other crypto entrepreneurs. Someone serious, responsible, altruistic. You convinced people to trust you by presenting yourself as someone who wanted to make the world better. And all of it was a lie designed to give you access to other people's money." The judge announced the sentence. 25 years in federal prison. 25 years. Sam Bankman-Fried would be 57 years old when released. The billionaire who'd been worth $26 billion at 30 would spend most of his 30s, 40s, and early 50s behind bars. Additionally, Judge Kaplan ordered Sam to forfeit $11 billion, the amount he'd stolen and the profits he'd made from his crimes. The money would be used to compensate victims through the bankruptcy process. As the bailiffs led Sam away, his parents sobbed in the gallery. The victims had mixed reactions. Some felt justice had been served. Others thought even 25 years wasn't enough for the devastation he'd caused. Sam Bankman-Fried, the MIT graduate who'd fooled everyone, was now federal inmate number 89,546-053. The aftermath of FTX's collapse rippled through the crypto industry for years. It wasn't just about one company failing. It was about the fundamental questions FTX raised about trust, regulation, and the entire crypto ecosystem. Immediately after the collapse, crypto prices plummeted. Bitcoin dropped 20%. Other cryptocurrencies fell even more. Investors panicked, wondering how many other exchanges were running frauds similar to FTX. If Sam Bankman-Fried, the responsible one, the MIT graduate, the effective altruist, could steal billions, who else was stealing? Several other crypto companies collapsed in FTX's wake, caught in the liquidity crisis or exposed as frauds themselves. BlockFi, a crypto lending platform, filed for bankruptcy partly due to their exposure to FTX. Voyager Digital, another lending platform, collapsed. Genesis Trading faced massive losses. The interconnected web of crypto companies that had all trusted each other turned out to be built on sand. Venture capitalists who'd invested in FTX faced humiliating losses. Sequoia Capital's $213 million investment? Gone. They had to write it down to zero and explain to their limited partners how they'd invested in what turned out to be one of the largest frauds in history. Other top-tier VC firms, Tiger Global, Paradigm, SoftBank, all lost hundreds of millions. The celebrity endorsers faced backlash too. Tom Brady and Gisele Bündchen, who'd been paid millions to promote FTX and appeared in commercials, were sued by victims. Larry David, who'd starred in the Super Bowl commercial, faced similar lawsuits. The argument was that these celebrities had lent their credibility to FTX without doing proper due diligence, and victims had trusted the platform partly because famous people endorsed it. Politicians who'd received donations from Sam scrambled to distance themselves. Many donated the money to charity or returned it to victims. But the stench of the scandal lingered. How had they all been fooled by a guy in cargo shorts who was obviously running a fraud? Why hadn't anyone asked hard questions about where FTX's money was really coming from? For the victims, the recovery process was long and painful. The bankruptcy proceedings revealed that FTX had only about $1 billion in liquid assets to cover $8 billion in customer claims. Initially, customers faced the prospect of recovering maybe 10 to 20 cents on the dollar, but something unexpected happened. Crypto prices surged in 2023 and 2024. Bitcoin, which had been around $16,000 when FTX collapsed, climbed to over $70,000 by early 2024. The bankruptcy estate still held significant amounts of cryptocurrency that had been seized from FTX's accounts. As those assets appreciated, the recovery fund grew. By mid-2024, bankruptcy trustees estimated that customers might recover 70 to 90% of their losses. Not because Sam had preserved their money, but because the crypto they'd deposited had increased in value during the bankruptcy process. It was a bizarre twist. Sam's theft had actually forced a kind of diamond hands holding period that ended up benefiting some victims. But even customers who recovered most of their money financially weren't made whole. The psychological damage, the stress, the years of uncertainty, those costs couldn't be calculated. And some victims, particularly those who'd been trading actively and lost potential profits, could never recover what they might have earned if FTX hadn't been a fraud. One victim, James Morrison, a programmer from California who'd lost $300,000, put it this way: "I'll probably get back $250,000 or so when bankruptcy is done, but I lost 2 years of my life to stress. My marriage almost ended because of the financial strain. My kids had to watch me fall apart. Even if I get most of the money back, I'll never get those years back. Sam stole more than dollars from us." The regulatory response to FTX was swift and significant. Lawmakers who'd been friendly with Sam and receptive to his lobbying suddenly became crypto skeptics. Congressional hearings were held. New regulations were proposed. The message was clear. Crypto needed adult supervision. The Securities and Exchange Commission took a harder line on crypto exchanges, arguing that most cryptocurrencies were securities that needed to be registered and regulated. The Commodity Futures Trading Commission increased scrutiny of crypto derivatives trading. New York's financial regulators implemented stricter rules for crypto companies operating in the state. Some in the crypto industry complained that the regulatory crackdown was overkill, that FTX was one bad actor and shouldn't be used to justify crushing the entire industry. But the counter-argument was obvious. If Sam Bankman-Fried could steal $8 billion without anyone noticing for years, clearly the current system wasn't working. One former SEC official, speaking anonymously, said, "FTX proved everything skeptics had been saying about crypto. Unregulated markets attract fraudsters. Self-regulation doesn't work. Trust me isn't an adequate substitute for audits and oversight." Sam built an $8 billion Ponzi scheme, and the crypto industry cheered him on as a hero until it collapsed. The industry itself began implementing reforms. Major exchanges like Coinbase and Kraken started providing proof of reserves, cryptographic proof that they actually held the customer assets they claimed to hold. Some exchanges brought in traditional auditing firms to verify their finances. The freewheeling, trust-based system that had allowed FTX to flourish was being replaced with something more rigorous. But many observers wondered if it was enough. Crypto's fundamental appeal had always been that it operated outside traditional financial regulation. The more it became regulated, audited, and supervised, the less it resembled the libertarian dream of decentralized money. FTX's collapse forced the industry to choose, remain true to its anti-regulation roots and accept that frauds like Sam would keep happening, or embrace traditional financial safeguards and become just another regulated industry. As the years pass, Sam Bankman-Fried will sit in federal prison watching the crypto industry evolve without him. He'll be eligible for parole in his 50s, by which time cryptocurrency will either be mainstream and regulated or will have collapsed under the weight of frauds like his. What are the lessons from Sam's spectacular rise and fall? First, intelligence doesn't equal integrity. Sam was genuinely brilliant. MIT graduate, mathematical genius, able to see market inefficiencies that others missed. But intelligence and ethics are completely separate qualities. Being smart at math doesn't make you trustworthy. The world confused Sam's intellectual abilities with moral character, and millions of people paid the price. Second, effective altruism can be a mask for greed. Sam's entire public persona was built around the idea that he wanted to make billions to give it away. How can you question someone with those motivations? But the altruism was always a lie. He never actually donated most of his wealth. He spent it on penthouses and political influence and keeping his fraud running. The effective altruist branding was just excellent marketing that made people trust him. Third, celebrity endorsements are not due diligence. Tom Brady believed in FTX. Larry David appeared in commercials. Sequoia Capital invested hundreds of millions. None of that meant FTX was legitimate. People assumed that smart, successful people wouldn't be fooled by a fraud. So if those people endorsed FTX, it must be safe. But everyone was fooled because nobody actually verified the claims. They trusted the signals instead of doing the work. Fourth, move fast and break things breaks people. Sam ran FTX with startup culture. Informal, fast-moving, rules optional. He made billion-dollar decisions in Signal group chats. He used emojis to approve wire transfers. He treated customer money like a personal piggy bank. That casual approach to finance might work for a tech company, but it's disastrous for a financial institution holding people's savings. Some industries require boring, rigorous controls for a reason. Fifth, the cover-up compounds the crime. Sam's fraud started with maybe a few $1 million in 2019. If he'd admitted the problem then, shut down Alameda and made customers whole, he'd have faced penalties but not prison. Instead, he covered it up, which required stealing more money, which required more lies, which snowballed into an $8 billion fraud. The original crime was bad. The years of deception and theft to hide it were worse. If you've followed this story from the beginning, you've seen how a brilliant young man convinced the world he was going to revolutionize finance and save the world through effective altruism, when in reality, he was just a thief who happened to be good at math. Sam Bankman-Fried wasn't a misunderstood genius whose risk management failed. He was a criminal who built a company specifically to steal customer money and used his MIT pedigree and quirky persona to convince people he was trustworthy. The cargo shorts, the messy hair, the video games during meetings, the beanbag chair, all of it was part of the image. I'm too authentic and eccentric to be a fraud. But authenticity and criminality aren't opposites. You can be genuinely yourself while genuinely stealing billions. Tom Brady lost millions believing in Sam. Sequoia Capital lost $213 million. Thousands of ordinary people lost their life savings, all because a 30-year-old convinced them he was different from other crypto entrepreneurs, that he was the responsible adult in the room. He wasn't. He was just better at lying than the others. Somewhere tonight, in some dorm room at MIT or Stanford, a brilliant young programmer is having an idea, a way to revolutionize an industry, a path to billions, and they're facing a choice. Build it honestly with real controls and real ethics, or cut corners and hope nobody notices. Sam Bankman-Fried made his choice in 2019 when he built that backdoor into FTX's code and decided customer money was his to use. Every day after that was just a continuation of that original choice. Lie, steal, and hope you're smart enough to get away with it. He wasn't smart enough. The FBI was smarter. His inner circle flipped on him. The evidence was overwhelming. And now he'll spend 25 years in prison thinking about the choices he made and the lives he destroyed. The MIT graduate who fooled everyone learned the hardest lesson of all. You can't genius your way out of fraud. You can't optimize your way around the law. You can't effective altruism your way past stealing $8 billion. Sometimes the smartest thing you can do is the simplest. Don't steal. Don't lie. Don't use other people's money to cover your losses. Sam Bankman-Fried knew that. He was smart enough to understand basic morality. He just chose to ignore it. And that choice, made over and over again for years, is why he'll spend the next quarter century in a federal prison cell, watching the crypto world move on without him.